I am telling you this because I think it might be coming for someone else next. My name is Dev, and 3 months ago I moved into a beautiful, sun-drenched apartment in a converted 19th century brownstone. It was a steel, which should have been the first red flag, but I was too busy being charmed by the crown molding and the original hardwood floors. The landlord, a brisk older woman named Mrs. Gable, had only one peculiar rule. The overhead fixture in the bedroom is temperamental. It's best to just use the lamps. Shed said it with a tight smile, her eyes avoiding mine as she handed over the keys. I shrugged it off as old wiring. The first week was perfect. I'd come home from my graphic design job, make dinner, and work on my portfolio by the soft glow of a floor lamp. The only oddities were minor. I'd sometimes wake up with the distinct, cold feeling that someone had just been standing beside the bed, breathing. I'd chalk it up to a dream. My cat, Mochi, would often stare fixedly at the empty ceiling corner in the bedroom, her tail puffed up, before suddenly bolting from the room. And then there was the smell. Not constant, but occasional a faint, dry scent, like old paper and cold soil, that would walk through and then vanish. I blamed it on the building's age. You know that feeling when you're home alone, and you're just comfortable? You're in your sanctuary. But what if your sanctuary started watching you back? What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you in your own home? Let me know in the comments. The escalation was slow, a drip feed of dread. It started with the lights. I'd come home to find a lamp on that I was certain I'd turned off. Then, the overhead bedroom light, the temperamental one, flickered on by itself at 3:17 a.m., 2 nights in a row. The light it cast was wrong. It wasn't warm or bright. It was a pale, clinical gray that made everything look flat and dead, like a forgotten photograph. It leached the color from my blue walls, from my own hands. I'd flip the switch off, and the room would plunge into a blackness that felt thicker, heavier than any natural dark. Mochi refused to enter the room after that. One night I woke up parched. The digital clock read 3:16 a.m. As I blinked, it clicked to 3:17, and with a soft electric pop, the overhead light bloomed to life. That awful gray light filled the room, and I saw it. On the ceiling, directly above my bed, was a shadow. It wasn't cast by anything in the room. It was a dense, person-shaped stain, like a watermark on the plaster. As I watched, frozen, it turned its head. It was looking down at me from its perch on the ceiling. I screamed, scrambling backward out of bed, yanking the plug of my bedside lamp from the wall. The room went dark, but the afterimage of that silhouetted head, craning at an impossible angle, was burned into my vision. I spent the next night on the couch, every light in the living room blazing. I called Mrs. Gable in the morning, my voice trembling. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Mr. Sharma, the previous tenant, he was a night photographer. He loved strange light. He became obsessed with that fixture. He stopped using the lamps. He said the gray light showed him true shapes. He wasn't well when he left." She hung up before I could ask what that meant. For a week, I boarded up the bedroom door. I used smart plugs to set all the lamps in the apartment on a randomized schedule, so it never looked empty. I slept with headphones on. The smell of old paper faded. Mochi started to relax. I began to think whatever it was, my defiance of the dark, my rejection of that gray light, had driven it away. This false safety was the most dangerous part. I started to believe I'd won. Then, last Tuesday, the power went out. A storm knocked out the grid for the whole block. My phone battery was at 5. The apartment was a sea of black, the only sound, the howling wind and the frantic beating of my own heart. I fumbled for candles, my hands shaking. I lit one, the small flame dancing wildly, and in that unstable orange light I saw them, shadows on the wall, but not my shadow. Dozens of them, all different sizes, all moving independently of any object in the room. They slithered up the walls, pooling on the ceiling. They were gathering, and in the center of the ceiling, the main shadow was forming again, deeper and more solid than before. It wasn't just on the ceiling now. It was part of it, its limbs stretching and merging with the other shadows, a dark, spreading cancer. The candle flame guttered. As it dipped, the shadows surged forward. As it flared, they receded. They were puppeteered by the light. My light. The only thing holding them back. I backed into a corner, clutching the candle, watching the wax drip hot onto my skin. The main shadow detached its head, lowering it from the ceiling on a stalk of darkness, coming level with my face. In the flickering light, I saw not a face, but a shifting, negative space, a hollow shape that promised absolute nothingness. A dry, papery rustle filled my ears, and that cold, earthy smell choked the air. It was the smell of a long-sealed tomb being opened. A whisper formed from the sound of crumbling plaster and snapping filaments seeped into my mind. The bright ones blind, the dark ones hide. Give us the gray, let us inside. My phone's final percentage died. The candle, down to its last nub of wax, sputtered. In the final instant of light, I saw the collective shadow lunge. I threw the candle at it. It went out in midair. The darkness that followed was absolute, physical. It pressed on my eyes, my mouth, my lungs. I felt cold, dry fingers brush my neck. I don't know how I made it to the front door. I don't remember unlocking it. I just remember falling into the storm-soaked night, screaming. I never went back. I left everything. Mochi, I am so sorry. I am writing this from a motel room where I keep every light on 247. I am afraid to sleep. But here's the worst part. Last night, the lamp by the motel bed, it flickered. Just once. And for a split second, the light turned a pale, familiar gray. I've started to see them out of the corner of my eye now. In any dim room soft, gray shapes moving just beyond the light's edge. They don't need the old apartment anymore. They just needed someone to look at them in their preferred light. And I did. I think they're learning to make their own.